Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. Bloody tea leaves and fucking coffee beans. They banned folks from toting teapots and kettles, classifying them as weapons of war. Frank remembers clearly that day, the day Dictator-in-Chief declared a state of emergency. Remembers all the stooges and quislings who clapped. Remembers the collective liberal orgasm, and how the elites, academics, and cultural icons collectively smirked. Then came the run-of-the-mill anecdotes, soldiers whose scalded limbs had been, or had to be, amputated. Women whose lives had been altered because the long arm of the law couldn't prevent their partners from keeping tea leaves and coffee beans on their shelves, under pillows, and in their pockets everywhere they went. Even children were paraded about, exploited as a major reason tea and coffee had to be abolished from both street corner and corner cafe. Of course, Starbucks and Dunkin's went into a frenzy. Their lobbyists and plants in press rooms went to town. They were neither alone nor wrong. Frank and other tea addicts and coffee fiends went into overdrive too. Government officials, armed to the teeth, retaliated, confiscating cups, teapots, and everything construed as having the potential for making tea. Even bloody spoons. He fought back when they kicked his front door in. He was made a prisoner under the law, but worse, under a presumptuous therapist. 2. You think I'm crazy, don't you? You think I'm all bonkers? What makes you think I think that, Frank? That you just did it. What did I do? Tried to be clever. People like you? People like me? Yes. Like you. Yes. Like my wife. Educated. Yet godless. People like me loathe people like you as much as you hate us. She asked incessantly and prodded deeper. He eventually talked about war, about his role in the last one, and about man in general, and the eternal romance between him and war. He licked his lips and rubbed his hands together as he spoke. You want to know why man keeps to war, Miss Hatina? She nodded. War don't file for divorce. She choked on her own saliva. We'll come to your ex-wife later. Let's stick to the war for now. They talked about it briefly. A lukewarm room becoming warmer. If you've never watched a friend's head split in half, you've no reason to sit there and tell me about this BPST nonsense. All this PTSD, whatever the creature's name is called. I saw real creatures, fought real dragons. Death was both my enemy and soulmate. She sat there and listened, and listened, and listened. With 7 minutes on the clock remaining, she finally cleared her throat. I don't understand everything you went through, Frank, and I'll never pretend to. My job is only to help. He nodded. She continued, because there's some good place in your soul, Frank. I want you to lead me there. Meanwhile, I'll be interpreting the road signs as we encounter them for you. Do you want me to come along? He smiled. The soldiers guarding his fort chose to lower both sword and spear. I guess you, the 6-foot-something battle-hardened soldier in the arena of the mind, Miss Hatina. You're correct. But since we'll be walking to a faraway place together, I guess you can call me Rose. Rumor had it I'd be talking to a Mrs. something. She showed him the finger where a ring used to be. And Frank, well, beamed. 3. They banned them from toting teacups, spoons, sugar basins, and so forth. That's why you won't find them on Main Street anymore. Starbucks was shut down. Dunkin's will follow soon, unless they agree to sell frappes and ice cream exclusively. Beverages that don't burn women and children. Frank finds himself in a maze, zigzagging his way in the slippery alleyways of downtown Kiwagama to quench his craving for the hot stuff, a thirst he contracted on the front lines. Dilapidated buildings cry through rusty gutters. Neon lights stutter like a car with insufficient dinosaur juice. A black cat meows and crosses in front of him. A dog howls at the thinnest slice of moon cosmically possible. A drunk slips. His bottle turns to powder in a muddy puddle. Steam rises from a manhole. Dear steam. A whiff of it dances towards the moon like an apparition. A shadow appears from around the corner and whistles at Frank. He follows. Not long after, an iron door gaps its jaws open and swallows Frank and his guide. Men with steaming teapots and kettles on the verge of hissing surround him. The spouts are longer than Pinocchio's nose after his girlfriend asks how she looks in some silly Halloween costume. Salt water germinates from his every pore, and his bladder tightens as they frisk him. Satisfied, they conceal their beverage brewers in their roomy jackets. He's led up a staircase whose stairwells are carpeted by needles, broken bottles, and used condoms. The air is damp and putrid. Steam rises. Steam, steam, steam. He shivers from steam that refuses to be blown off. Steam that, left unchecked, will one day be sufficient to power a dystopian locomotive. A CCTV camera buzzes. Feet are dragged towards the door. Crimson light radiates from a peephole before the deadbolt clinks. "Come in," says a tall, broad-shouldered fellow with a huge scar waiting to spring from under his long beard and show its fangs. For, in every session thereafter, she helped him paint a picture. He talked about war, asked about university. She painted the experience in mostly positive terms. Loads of hookups, he said. They were getting too cozy. Not enough, she answered with pouted lips. I noticed a hickey on your neck the other day, coupled with what you just told me. Is that why you broke up? Cold intimacy, the lack thereof? Frank, this is all I'm going to say about this. I was once upon a time a happily married woman, until I wasn't. Well, that makes two of us, if it makes you feel better. You see, I might not have fought a war, but we've so much in common than you think. He beamed. Do we now? I believe all humans have. What really happened, Rose? I understand the power dynamic here, but even Mussolini dangled carrots. She laughed. Okay then. We got lazy, grew tired, and drifted apart. He blames me, and I blame him. You've kids? No, Frank, we don't. Do you date? She froze and cursed herself for being sidetracked so easily. Tell me about your upbringing, Frank. He talked about his childhood stammer, about his first crush, then opened up about his father. All my friends had their dads present growing up. They went fishing, threw ball, showed up at games. What did I have? An absent dad and absent-minded mother whose descriptions of my pops when we had conversations about him were pretty ugly. Basically, called him a brute. After which she'd tell me I was my father's child whenever I did something. Like what? Hit someone in the head with a bat. She jotted something in her notebook. He started to realize on his own how the heat of life and circumstance has been bringing him to a boil ever since childhood. No wonder he felt like exploding and powering steam engines while at it. He talked about how he found himself in a vortex of alcohol, syringes, and women with brown teeth and skimpy clothes as soon as he hit puberty. Why do you think you went there? She said, sipping hot beverage he said he'd never been a fan of. Truthfully, bigger boys convinced us smaller ones. That was what being a man was all about. But you didn't like it? Well, you know even hell has its moments, I'd wager. She chuckled. What changed? An STI. She giggled some. He saw it and chuckled wryly. I realized being a man doesn't always mean you should die early or pointlessly. Like, if you're gonna die early anyway, like I always felt I would. Why not spend your short life in the defense of others? You became a man, definitely. Served my country, came back, got married, had a kid. Then she left with another man. A long pause in which all the sound heard was sipping and stirring of tea. But ironically, the steam which rose to the ceiling and covered the room in a film wasn't from the beverage. It was from the purple reservoir of his emotions. She'd to turn the air conditioner on. After his kettle stopped whistling, she ventured. How did that make you feel? That I should have died in the war. What about now? Sweaty, hot, fuming, jealous. I don't know. You're lying to me, Frank. Redness reappeared on Frank's face. I feel like shit, if you really want to know. Why? That's what I'm here to understand, ain't it? I'm here to help. Just, it alternates between I screwed up, my wife screwed me over by screwing some screw up, or the screw up who screwed my wife screwed me over. My mind ain't sure what to hold on to. Ex-wife now, Frank. Remember, she's water under the bridge now. A thick vein popped on the man's forehead. She was stolen from me. She made a choice, Frank. His voice brewed a purple storm. They took the house. My fucking house. By law, Frank. Frank threw the notebook on his lap at the window. It sublimated into shards. He pushed the couch back violently and wagged his fist at thin air. They took my daughter from me. Is that the law, too? No? Yes? Well, I'll tell you what. The law is wrong for taking my daughter away from me. The law is bloody wrong. 5. The dealer finishes a call before his attention turns to Frank. 2 ladies flank him on either side, gyrating slightly to the thumping of 808s coming from an adjoining room. There's a bouncer on each of the 4 corners of the makeshift office space. My boy, Frankie. When my boys told me about you, ain't believed shit they said. Said you was a big man now. Told them every big man's working for me since the ban. He laughs. But here you are. You done become bigger than a hippo. In good ways, of course. Thanks, Bobo. What if I make you offer? Huh? For old time's sake. Frank fidgets excessively. What offer? Come work for me. There's good money here. Big, fat money to be made. An older lady brings Gras whiskey in 2 glasses. With all due respect, Bobo, says Frank soon after the lady leaves. Ain't looking for no job. The room goes taut. So why's you here, Frankie? They take turns to sip the old man's health. Frank's gaze darts about. For, you know, the thing? Frankie, don't try to be clever with me. I know you here for the hot stuff. But why is what I ask you? Because, Bobo, only you knows how to get things like that. Bobo smiles proudly. What you want the hottie-hottie for? Self-defense. There's an entire ministry of, I trust my own fingers than the entire ministry. Bobo laughs and claps his hands. Perfect. Had to test you to see whether you bulk under pressure or not. I only deal with solid folk. He regards Frank for a bit. The latter breathes heavily. Steam blows out of his ears and nose like a malfunctioning toy dragon. But he keeps still. I ain't one to judge. But anger breeds nothing. Frankie, nothing. Forget that woman. You come work with me. There's plenty of women to pass around here. See all this? Plenty. Does the package you suggesting include my daughter? Bobo gestures for something to be brought into the room. He does the sign of the cross. Anger burns you, Frankie boy. You, not nobody else. God won't say, I didn't warn y'alls. They bring the man his order. A collector's wet dream. Like one of those brewing pots Grandpa used to keep, and Grandma used to pester him about. Why you don't keep it as far away from reach as possible. You want your grandkids to be caught up in that life too? Grandpa had a well-known addiction for the stimulant. He'd a lot of scars to show for the burns he'd endured over the years. Because anytime's tea time. That's why. Looks good alrighty, Frankie? Frank nods. Good. But where's the coffee beans? Where's the what? I'm sorry. I'm used to calling, aha! Coffee beans. I think I know what coffee beans is. Gary, you get it too? One of the bodyguards nods when the dealer looks at him. He turns back to Frank. You a clever buggers, Frankie. Pity you don't want work. We could use some creativity here. Martin, you brought this man a pot of steaming nothing, you see? Bring the man his bloody tea leaves and fucking coffee beans. Money exchanges hands. So does a brown paper bag in the opposite direction. Frank starts to leave. Remember, don't spill the beans about me, Frankie, or my men will spill something hot on your baby girl. And unlike you, I'm a very literal man. 6. They texted and laughed and looked each other in the eye. When they looked each other in the eye long enough, the hands of her eyes pulled his face closer. Space between them crumbled. Their faces rammed into each other's. Sparks flew. Passions exploded into groaning, screaming, and orgasms. They met at the office to talk about demons, online to flirt, and at her place to talk about the future. She showed him a diary she kept when she was 6. He noticed a particular motif. On every other page was a rough sketch of a girl carrying things like knives, razors, guns, and catapults. You wanted to hurt someone? Frank said, after kissing her bare chest. Kill someone. Well, did you succeed? Not that I'm aware of. Who are all these people? Everyone. I hated everyone. My sis was too pretty. My cousin was too liked. Hannah Montana was too popular. She's in here? Flip a page. Again. There she is. God, you were so twisted. What changed? She sighed. A ballpoint pen and a teapot. What? We'd a bully at school. A boy who got away with everything. One time, I snapped and sunk my bic in his face. God, yeah. It was atrocious. Got me expelled. Mom thought I'd learnt my lesson. Grandma thought not. She boiled water in a kettle and called me over. Made me stretch my hands towards the pot. Don't tell me she poured hot water on your hands. Fingers. Yeah, that's a lot better. She's like, every time you let your anger boil over and think about hurting someone, think about this kettle. Today, I'm the one pouring hot water on you. But one day, it will be the world. I'm trying to understand her philosophy, but what does that even mean? Our anger hurts us as much as, or more than, it hurts the people we lash out at. When I'm angry, I think about how much hot water I'm pouring on myself. And it works all the time. Flip a page, again. There you go. That's you in a kitchen. That's me carrying the proverbial teapot. I substituted it for my weapons. Sketched it over a knife or a razor. You can do it too. I'm an army man. They recently banned my kind of weapon. Well, I know you know where to get one if you really wanted it. Please think about my grandma's metaphor and me when you think about hurting anyone ever again. You will? I will. They kissed. His hand rested on a breast. Someone opened the door, saw them digging gems out of each other, and dropped the flower bouquet he carried. She leapt from Frank's lap and rushed after him. 7. Above all else, Frank hates liars. The only person he hates more than he who generally lies is he who lies specifically to him, and everyone seems to take advantage of his willingness to give the benefit of doubt. Politicians lied about the war, about its purpose. Now they're lying about the purpose of some laws. But politicians are known to lie. Who believes politicians anyway in this day and age? His father said he was going around the block. He never returned. Mother lied about why he chose to do that. To save face, his wife. Don't people take "till death do us part" literally anymore? Then there's Rose. No, she's the therapist now. She was cheating on her husband, with him no less, making him no better than his wife's. She's your ex-wife now, lover. You don't do that. And now she's trying to call. He's not picking that. What for? More bullshit? He languishes in his car, busy brewing. 6 tea bags in a kettle, 6 coffee beans in a coffee machine. He turns the knobs to boil until the lid starts dancing and the spout sputtering. A police siren wails. The cabin turns icy. They pass. Steam resumes. He cocks them both. Oops, better stay with Grandma's metaphor. But it's slipping. They banned these from ever finding their way into hands like his. Because of this, he sees them. He sees her. A hot spring blasts the crown of his head. He's out. He's striding. They see him. Too late. Kettle hisses, then regurgitates. It starts raining on him too. Torrential rainfall at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. A bitter choice. The first thing he could recognize was an old, musty, wet scent. He's groggy, his mouth is dry, and his head hurts, but he feels warmth on his face. With that, he hears a crackling fire. Attempting to lift his hand to his face, he realizes his hands are tied. His feet are tied. He opens his eyes and can see that he is tied to a chair. His eyes get used to the fire's dim light, and he is seated in an old, dusty room with wooden beams at a small round table with a teapot and teacup in the middle. He smells the scent of steeping tea. He starts to feel panic and realizes that he is well and indeed tied to the chair, and he's not getting out. His mind races like anyone's would in this predicament. Who did this? Why me? Why am I here? His usual defensive bravado kicks in, but he quickly realizes there's no one here to impress, to convince, or so he initially thought. Swiveling his head, looking around for anything to help him escape, a way out, or a clue as to where he is, he yelps when he sees her. There, by the fire, a young woman stands. She is tall, curvier than he prefers, and simply dressed. She doesn't make a single sound. She seems calm as she continues looking into the flames while holding her cup of tea and quietly sipping. Who the hell is she? At first, he thinks this is a first date gone wrong, but then he sees her face, and he recognizes her. I know her, but his head is so foggy. Did she drug me? He can't place her face. He feels the first beads of sweat dripping down his face as he tries to look around for someone else to help, or something to lean against to free himself. Looking around and listening, he confirms they are the only two here. Where the hell am I? Is this a cottage? In New York City? After spending precious moments trying to make sense of this, he shakes it off and starts to take in more of the space, thinking of creative ways to get himself free. If I can just get free, she's just one woman. He thinks to himself, I've managed worse. She doesn't acknowledge his panic. She slowly looks at the fire and sips her tea. If she's this calm, she has a plan. He could handle emotions, tears, and outbursts. But calm women never spelled a good time to him. Noticing him finally, the woman looks over at him, and it barely registers on her face that he is awake. She takes another sip of tea and moves to the table, taking the other seat across from him. She looks down at her hands and places them on the table. Only then does he see her entire face when she looks him in the eye. He is immediately filled with fear. Fuck, he says, and stills in, struggling with his restraints. She smiles lightly at his remark. I knew you to be more eloquent than that, waving it off. But again, I did catch you off guard. Catching himself, he prepares to put on a show. Ellie, what's going on? What happened? How are we here? How are you here? I thought you had left the country. I've been so worried about you. I tried to write a call or text, but I didn't have your information. You have no idea how worried I've been after everything you've gone through, what we've gone through. She said nothing and continued staring at him with the calm, blank stare she'd had when she first sat down. Look, honey, what happened was horrible. So many terrible losses and accidents. When your brother... He paused when he heard her quick inhale. Her head whipped to the side like she had been slapped. And when she looked back at him, he saw fury in her eyes. If this is about the money, I can pay you. But you have no right to do this. To what? Kidnap me? Drug me? What else are you going to do? You don't have the guts to do any real damage. What do you think is going to happen? Let's talk this out, like calm adults. You're making a mountain from a molehill. Nothing that happened was my fault. He was about to dig into his routine defense that he'd done during police questioning and lawyers listening. But she held up a hand. Martin, it's not about money. It never was for our family. Though I know that's all you understand. So this may be a tough concept. It's about the truth. She stands slowly, gracefully grabbing the teacup and placing it before him, pausing to take a look at him. The first proper look she's taken of him in 5 years since everything happened. You'd think with all that money, you'd have taken better care of yourself. She moves the tea kettle closer to the cup and settles back in her chair. I was surprised how big you've gotten. I'm grateful I got the extra rope. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so snug and cozy on that chair, she said, sitting back and putting her hands in her lap. Martin looks at the teacup. It's empty. Then he looks at the tea kettle. He can see steam rising from the spout and smell tea. He looks back at her and sees that she has a calm, serene smile. What the fuck do you want, Ellie? He says, defeated, realizing he will have to play whatever game she has set up and outsmart her, like he does with everyone. I've made you a soothing tea, but I want to tell you a story first, she says. And he sees a brief shadow of darkness across her face. Was it a shadow? Or is it her anger? Either way, it can't be good. She takes a deep breath and begins her tale. There was a family, a happy and loving family. They weren't perfect. No one was, but they were happy. A mother, a father, a daughter, and a younger brother. They had been building a nice estate as a family since her brother was back from college, and their daughter was running their company business. Combined, their wealth was not something to write to the Times about, but it afforded them a lifestyle and attention. They were comfortable, happy, giving much back to their community, and always the first people to help those in need. Reaching back for her own tea, she sipped. Then a man introduced himself. The man saw that their kindness and eagerness to help were things to be preyed upon and taken advantage of. That's where you come in, Martin, she said, leaning her elbows on the table and putting her head in her hands. He could tell she was comfortable, so he listened, waiting for his time to strike. This charming, crass, but witty man came to this family with an opportunity to do so much good. You did your homework there, didn't you, Marty? Knowing my father had been dying to help those less fortunate in other parts of the world, but didn't have the gift or health to travel like he'd like. So you offered your assistance. She continued, look, your father was an adult and made a decision he shouldn't have. It's not my fault. He was as gullible as he was fragile in health. Martin interjected, but it didn't move or ruffle her as he hoped. Again, he could deal with outbursts and emotions, but that calm quiet unnerved him. My father trusted you. He gave you a sum of money the first time. I don't want to know how you substantiated the positive works the money did for those families, she said, leaning back and drumming her fingers on the table. AI has come a long way these days. It's not my fault he couldn't see the flaws. He tried to add that charm, but failed because he kept looking back at the tea. Is it poisoned? Is she going to kill me with the teapot? Seems a bit violent for her, he thought. But he'd been surprised by her already. She scoffed at his remark. You continued to take his money and show these manufactured images and proof of goodwill for 2 years, until he gave you access to our funds without knowing you had cheated him. You promptly drained those funds, millions of dollars, and disappeared, funneling the money to an untraceable account. No court would mandate a warrant or search for you. Again, sweetie, it's not my fault your father was an idiot, and you could have stopped him, he said, thinking the sweat from his palms could help loosen the rope around his wrists. She went on. The stress of this loss and the bureaucratic failing that is our justice system caused my already fragile father to suffer a heart attack and die, leaving my mother a husk of a woman. I had to step away from the business and take care of her. My brother took over the company. You had thoroughly gutted those funds to barely enough to keep the lights on. The debt drowned my brother and his sanity, and he took his own life. The loss of both men caused my mother to stop living. She wouldn't eat. She wouldn't sleep. She just wept. Until one day, she just stopped breathing. The doctors say it was a brain aneurysm. It was heartache, she says with tremendous confidence. She gets up and goes to the fire. He sees her shaking. Is it from the cold or from anger? He continues his slow struggle to free his hand from the ropes, but knows it won't do any good. He just has to wait and see how this plays out. Look, Ellie, I'm sorry this all happened to you. I really did send some money to those charities. He had to, he thought. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to get their government-valid invoice for his tax write-offs, which he forged. And everything that happened to your family, you can't blame those freak incidents on me. It just doesn't make sense. And you've always been a sensible woman. Let's just talk like adults, and we can find the reason behind all this. He began preparing more excuses, but he saw that she didn't even react. She took a slow breath while staring into the fire. You ruined us for nothing but greed. He didn't know what to say, so she turned and stared at him. For greed, she whispered. Taking her time, she returned to the table and picked up the teapot, keeping eye contact with him She poured the tea into the cup. She placed the teapot back down on the table. Stepping behind him, she stills. In that pregnant pause of silence, horrifying scenarios rush into his mind. Is she going to smash my face against the table? Was it a ploy? Is she going to slit my throat or strangle me? He hears her take a deep breath, unties one of his hands, and slowly takes her seat across from him. Unafraid of what he might do with one hand free. The tea is yours, Martin. A gift from me, she says, leaning back in the chair. He looked at the cup. The dark liquid smelled rich and fragrant. Was it poisoned? Maybe. Maybe not. If she wanted to kill him, wouldn't she have done it already? Why wait so long? Why all the dramatics? Was she testing his conscience? Joke's on her. He doesn't think he has one. A twisted act of mercy. Instead of a violent death he would likely have had from the latest con, he'd definitely turned on the wrong family. That was not his best work. He'd been getting sloppy. So what? He drinks it? If he refuses, will she force him? He stares at the cup. As I said before, this is about trust. It's about faith in kindness, in my kindness. Do you have that faith, Martin? Pausing, she watches his internal struggle. Take a drink, Martin, she says, leaning forward. He could throw it in her face as a distraction, but it's not hot enough to do any damage, and he still would be stuck in this chair. It wouldn't distract her enough to manage an escape. And if I don't? He asks quietly. She cocked her head to the side and knowingly smiled, confirming that if he didn't, she'd force it. With a deep breath and trembling hand, he lifts the cup to his lips and drinks. He watches her face as the warm, bitter tea slides down his throat. He stares at her as he waits to feel anything. His heart pounds. Is this it? Or is it nerves? What else will I start feeling? Throat burning? Organ failure? Ellie watches him in silence. Her expression is unreadable. 1 minute passes, then another, and another. He feels no pain. Was there even any poison? Was it just tea? He laughs nervously with relief. He can feel sweat dripping from his face. That's it? That was your big revenge? Making me squirm and sweat? Sneering at her. I knew you didn't have it in you. Weak, just like your whole family. Ellie smiles and leans closer, whispering, Who said the poison works fast? Martin's smug smile falters. He looks at the cup, the back at Ellie's serene face. What do you mean? He blurts out between panicked breaths. She stands and picks up her coat, and he sees her demeanor change to light and easy. Some things take time, Marty. She pauses and smiles at him. It could be days. It could be weeks. It could be in your sleep. It could be during your favorite meal. And it causes a devastating reaction. It could be tomorrow in a crowded room. You'll just have to wait and see and hope. She tosses a kid's Swiss Army knife on the table and walks out. He stares at the closed door in horror. He's alive for now. But for how long? The fear will never leave him. With every meal, every sip, every breath, he will wonder if it will his last. Eaten up with indifference. Eaten up with indifference. I wake to the sound of gnawing, or possibly the sensation of my leg being pulled. It's impossible to know exactly what stirs me, and I'm not even sure if waking is the right term anyway. Am I awake? I am lying on my back, looking up at a single strip light on an otherwise unsurprisingly white ceiling. There seems no possibility that I might move my eyes to see why my leg feels so odd. No more can I move any other part of my body, not even my tongue. This, a feeling that should induce panic, and yet it doesn't. Thinking about it more, there's no particular need to move my tongue, and I don't really know why I've become fixated with the challenge. But I am, and spend what I should imagine is around 1 to 2 minutes trying to poke it out. There is tapping from the corner of the room and an occasional stifled cough, and I assume, from what I can see and hear, that I am in a small, mostly white office space occupied by a lady who types on an old-fashioned typewriter. Hello? I imagine, unable as I am to move my lips, mouth, or my diaphragm to produce any sound. The secretary, as I'm now sure she is, carries on with her task, and I hear a faint ting announcing the completion of a line, followed by a thoroughly satisfying ratcheting noise as she starts the next. Tap, tap, tappity tap. The pleasant sensation of being in a room with a hard-working, old-fashioned typist is marred a bit by the chewing, slobbering sound of whatever, or whoever, is gnawing my leg off. Oddly, it doesn't hurt being eaten, if that is what is happening. And I find it puzzling as to why I feel no pain. I make a monumental effort to object, but nothing at all happens. So I decide to stick with the peculiar feeling of relaxed easiness that is the sound of the diligent office assistant. Do you want tea, Derek? The gnawing stops and my leg settles. Yes, that would be lovely, Diane. Derek sounds very much as if he might still have a large portion of my lower calf in his mouth. It seems I'm being consumed by another human. A human with a very out-of-date name. I hope he will stand up, pop into my eye line, so I can get a look at the fellow and try to communicate my displeasure at what he is presumably doing to me. Nothing happens as I try to move. Nothing at all, so I stop trying and lie still. There really is no other option open to me. The typewriter noises cease, and I hear the sounds of water filling a kettle. Ah, now that rings a bell. Yes, I am here to fix a dripping tap. Is the tap working now, Di? Derek says, confirming my recently revived memory. Seems fine. The plumber fixed the drip, and it turns off properly now. Apparently, I've done the job already. I do remember now. I hear water splash as she confirms her findings. But judging by the tugging sensation, Derek had lost interest and is back at his meal again. I am aggrieved at being referred to as the plumber, not because I'm not, or that I would prefer the use of my actual name, but more that I am being talked about as if I'm not present in the room. Well, Diana, that's not true. And it's actually rather rude to talk about me as if I'm not here. Hello, I'm here. I can't say. I conclude that the secretary is so used to her boss, if he is such, eating tradesmen, that she herself sees them as little more than snacks, like those sandwiches people buy from vans mid-morning. This brings me on to two further thoughts. Firstly, I should be hungry. I've not had my morning meal and distinctly remember thinking that I would have something in the van once the tap was fixed. Secondly, Diana hasn't offered me a cup of tea. Both remembrances lead on to their own chain of smaller thoughts concerning the parking on yellow lines of my van and the suspicion that Diana is deliberately ignoring me. The kettle boils to the accompaniment of that lovely crockery chinking sound and spoon in cup noise that make me wholeheartedly wish I too could have a nice cup of tea. It isn't thirst, possibly not even a desire to savor the taste. It is a need to be included as someone rather than something. The something being a meal. There you go, love. Thanks, Di, lovely. I imagine the scene, having only their conversation to work with. Di handing a nice, hot mug of tea to Derek. He, in turn, has now stopped chewing at my calf and is reaching around, taking his tea and pursing his lips for that first, utterly pointless, too hot sip. Can't see it, though. Only the ceiling. Why do we try and taste the first mouthful of freshly made tea when it is quite blatantly and obviously going to be too hot? That is unanswerable and annoying that I have no opportunity to practice the futility myself. Oh, hot, shouts Derek. I feel my leg being pushed, though without sensation, presumably to make space for the cup. I am little more than a dish being nudged aside for the beverage, and I do find that particularly unkind. Being eaten is one thing. At least I am wanted and a part of things when that is happening. Unpleasant as it so horribly is, or at least should be. Why don't I mind? A chair scrapes, and the sound of something being unwrapped, followed by a commentary from the freshly seated Di. Lovely cheese and pickle. Derek doesn't feel the need to comment. I get the impression that the secretary is perfectly happy with the position of denial that I have allocated her regarding my presence. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense that she should be eating plowman sandwiches with crisps, crunch, crunch, in the same room as a man devouring another human. So Diana is in denial. Are the secretary's name and denial anagrams? I never was good at that sort of thing, and eventually give up with a vague feeling of a leftover E, but no certainty at all. Why isn't other stuff more prevalent in my head? The question of being unable to move, what it is that has happened to cause my current perilous predicament, and how might it end? I'm not really bothered, though. I just feel sort of relaxed, with a vague uneasiness at being ignored by Di. It dawns on me that I am now discussing events in real time with myself. But that's fair enough, given the circumstances. I do hope I'm not going mad, though. Or have I already done so? And this is all just a part of that. It isn't. It's definitely real. A sudden, vigorous tugging at my outer thigh causes me to rock slightly, and the ceiling to dance in a slightly dizzying fashion. Whilst I can't pinpoint the exact location of the peculiar, numb pulling, I reckon Derek is gnawing hard at a portion of muscle just above my knee. It stops, and I listen as he chews, then feel slightly nauseated when he takes a large sip of tea. I've never liked that, watching people with mouthfuls of food taking a drink. Still, it would be nice to watch anything now, other than the ceiling, which is devoid of entertainment since a large housefly disappeared a while ago. Lovely tea, Di? Is it Yorkshire? Yes. Nothing but the best. You know I always look after you, dear. After some time, and a bit more leg pulling, the typing recommences, and I feel very glad of the happy clackety-clack, ringing bell, and satisfying ratchet noise. Time means nothing to me, and I don't feel that it is either dragging or speeding past. It just is. I must have been in a reverie of a sort, because at some point Derek has moved on to my other leg, starting at my foot, and I barely noticed the change. I feel hypnotically relaxed, uncaring, and unconcerned. I wish I could think of the word catatonic. Undoubtedly, but I think there is a better phrase that indicates something more than physical inability. Whatever it is, it shouldn't apply. What is happening to me should be alarming, but somehow I'm not as bothered as I most certainly should be. The lights go out after that, and I enter an entirely unknown passage of time before they flicker on again. However, many hours passed, and I'm guessing around 12. I still can't think of the word. It isn't euphoric, not at all. I hear someone taking their coat off, filling, and then switching on the kettle, and assume it to be Di, fortifying herself for another day at the office. I can't see anything but the ceiling and the fly, which has reappeared and is now as motionless as I am. It's Friday. There has only been one period of darkness since I arrived to sort out the tap on the Thursday morning. I must certainly have a ticket on my van by now, and know that my family are starting to wonder why I'm not home. But Mum won't be bothered. Not yet. He's probably stayed over at someone's after going to the pub. I imagine her saying to my father, who wouldn't have cared less, a bit like me, really. Still, I feel no emotion at all. Not about Mum, dumb, or even Nicole, who I am supposed to be taking for a curry tonight. Odd that, not worrying about my loved ones, but not as strange as the very slight but growing resentment that Diana is deliberately ignoring me. That feeling, the one of being irritated at being ignored, is actually the only strong one left. All others apparently crushed by that overwhelming lack of concern that still hasn't got a name. Derek's just arrived and has wasted no time at all tucking into my right upper thigh. He's barely spoken to his secretary and is actually paying me all his attention, even if only to consume my leg. As for Diana, surely she could at least have bent over and looked at me when she came in. Rude, that's what it is. But even this emotion is pretty subdued, and I forgive her once the happy tappity-tap, clackety-clack, dinging starts. It's all very soporific. Good word, that, but not the one I'm searching for. My mind wanders a bit as the day progresses. A day of ham and lettuce sandwiches for Di, and a large portion of my groin for her boss. I remember arriving on Thursday and finding the address of a run-of-the-mill Victorian terrace office with a brass plaque on the door. I'd parked on a double yellow on a back street that was less busy, safe in the knowledge I'd be back pretty quickly if it was just a tap washer job. "Plumber's here, Derek," Diana had said, introducing me by trade rather than name to her boss, who'd barely looked up from his desk, choosing to acknowledge me with little more than a wave. After that, I'm not sure what happened. I'm jolted from my reminiscences by the sudden ringing of a phone. Another relic of the past, I decide, given its distinct ring rather than a modern electronic noise. How nice! It hadn't rung at all on Thursday. Perhaps they weren't that busy. "Hello, D&D accountants," says Di cheerily. Ah yes, D&D accountancy. I remember. Di isn't just a secretary at all, and she had referred to Derek as her husband at one point. I'd forgotten that. "Derek's a bit busy right now. I'm his partner. Can I help?" A bit busy, chomping through some inner part of me. The feeling of tugging is much less pronounced today, and I notice that my sense of hearing is slightly muffled. My vision not quite so acute. The strip light is very slightly blurred. I can still hear well enough, though, and the phone conversation should be providing some light relief to the ongoing tedium of immobility and lack of control. But no, I simply listen because it is happening, not for any other reason. Yes, we can certainly take on your business, Mr. Court. Let me take down some details. I don't get bored of the half conversation. I just listen. In the end, I stop doing that too, and lie in my state of indifference as Derek slowly munches through my midriff. Eventually, the light goes off. Another amount of time passes, presumably an entire weekend. On Monday, it's more of the same. Clackety-clack and tuna salad on brown. The highlight of Monday, not that I measure events or grade them these days, is when Derek pulls violently on my left arm and I roll slightly to one side. I'm treated to a slightly blurred image of Di eating a chocolate biscuit and reading from a lovely old leather-bound diary before Derek pushes me back to a more prone position. It dawns on me in that briefest of moments that Diana doesn't own a computer. I find that most peculiar, but decide not to dwell on it too long. It's a lot harder to hear now. The phone rings twice, but I can't really hear the conversation. My sense of smell is still okay, and I recognized the metallic odor of what must be me. Alongside myself, I detect Di's perfume and the furniture wax polish that has been used on the beautiful, antique oak and leather topped desk I recall being in the center of the office. I'm on that desk now, or at least some of me is. On Tuesday, there's a delivery. I can't really hear much now, and my vision is so poor that there is either darkness or light, little else. So I don't know who has rung the barely audible buzzer or what it is that Di had gone to the front door to collect. Tappity-tap. But only just. I miss the ratchet sound and barely hear the ding. A week has passed, more or less. I realize that there is little more of me left than a head, and possibly a small bit of neck. Derek, it seems, is quite greedy. The very last thing I am aware of is the light flickering. On, off, on, off. It doesn't usually do that, having to date been a fairly decisive piece of electronics. A very muffled voice. Di, I think. Lights on the blink. We'd better call an electrician. Yes, I hear Derek mumble through a mouthful of something. I'm about ready. Clackety-clack, and one last ding. Apathy. That's the word I was looking for. I wake to the sound of gnawing. Or is it the sensation of someone or something pulling at me? In the confusing half-second that exists in that time between consciousness and otherwise, it is very difficult to know what's real and what isn't. The edge of a moment. With squealing tires, the bus slowly came to a stop, its doors groaning open. Abby's first step after the long journey felt weak. Her shoes crunched in the snow as she looked around and slung her bag over her shoulder, her breath curling in the crisp December air. The familiar sight of her childhood town, a quiet corner of North Carolina, had hardly changed in the years she'd been away. Christmas lights flickered in the windows of the small brick houses, and a gentle dusting of snow clung to the evergreens lining the main street. Home, she thought, although it hadn't been a home to her for years, and it certainly lost that feeling long ago. She was simply here to spend the holidays with her mother, celebrate her birthday, and finally take a deep breath after years of grueling studies. But as she adjusted the strap of her duffel bag, she collided with someone. Hard. The road was slick with fresh snow, and Abby's boots failed to find purchase. She slipped, her arms flailing as gravity yanked her down. She hit the ground with a thud, snow seeping into her coat. "Ow!" she muttered, wincing. Before she could move, a pair of strong hands reached out to help her up. "You okay?" The voice was warm, concerned. Abby looked up. Irritation flickered through her until her brain caught up to what just happened. She froze. The man before her was impossibly familiar. His sharp blue eyes, the dimple in his cheek as he frowned. It was as if she were staring at one of the few old photographs she kept of her father. Luke, a man she never knew. Her father who left her and her mom so soon after Abby was born. It couldn't be. This man looked no older than 30. Her father, if he were alive, would be nearing 60. "Are you okay?" the man asked again, still with a firm grip on her shoulders, as if she might collapse again if he let go. Abby struggled to find words. I think so. Let me get you a coffee. That'll help." Unable to object, and with her thoughts spinning, she found herself following him into a small coffee shop she didn't recognize. Was this new? Had she just never noticed it before? The place had an old-fashioned charm, with a jukebox humming softly in the corner, and a menu written in looping cursive script. "Hi, Luke. What can I get you today?" The girl behind the counter smiled warmly. He ordered 2 cups of steaming black coffee, while Abby sat down at a small table by the big window. She looked outside at the snow-dusted street, the glowing Christmas decorations, the town she knew so well. Yet something felt different, familiar, but not quite right. "I'm Luke, by the way," the man introduced himself as he set the cups down. Yes, she heard that. But she wasn't processing it. Abby's stomach twisted. "I'm Abby." "That's a pretty name. Are you from here, Abby? Or just visiting?" The small talk momentarily distracted her from the gnawing sense of unease. "A little bit of both, I guess. I was born here, but moved away when I went to college." He nodded, sipping his coffee. Abby studied his face. The only pictures she had of her dad were old and grainy. Not much to go on. But this man felt so eerily familiar. Maybe a long-lost brother? A cousin? Someone with an uncanny resemblance to her father? Maybe this was the reason her dad disappeared so suddenly after she was born. Maybe he was the reason. She cleared her throat, trying to form a coherent sentence. So, what about you? Are you from around here? Yeah, born and raised. And what do you do? Abby needed to know more. Nothing much to tell? I work odd jobs here and there, but I'm trying to find something more permanent. Maybe move to a bigger place next year. They each took another sip of coffee. Abby glanced around again. She didn't recognize the people in the cafe. The decor seemed off, more old-fashioned. Then something else struck her. I don't recognize this place, she muttered, almost to herself. Luke heard her. Really? It's been here forever. Maybe I just never paid much attention, she said, forcing a small smile. You should. It's a great place. He laughed suddenly and pointed toward the jukebox in the back. That's where my wife and I shared our first kiss. We're expecting a baby girl any day now. Abby blinked. Oh, she couldn't help but smile at the small anecdote. He even blushed slightly. Sorry, I don't know why I just said that. His voice lowered. Now it was his turn to study her. There was something about her, the same blue eyes as his, but her hair, light and wavy, falling in big waves around her shoulders. You remind me of her, he said, realizing it. Abby's fingers tightened around her cup. Oh, my wife, he said, his voice softer now. Her hair, the way you move your face. You look like her. Abby swallowed hard, but remained silent. Luke chuckled awkwardly, shaking his head as if trying to get rid of the thought. It's strange, though. You feel familiar? Have we met before? Abby forced a small smile. What do you say to that? With this feeling in her gut, she couldn't explain. No, I don't think so. He nodded slowly, like trying to fit together pieces of a puzzle that wouldn't align. Weird. Weird didn't even begin to cover it. Maybe his wife was the missing piece in all of this. What's her name? Your wife? Abby asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Part of her already knew, but needed him to confirm it. Julie. Luke leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on the table, as though he could read the answer in her face. You know her. Are you related? Abby's heartbeat thundered in her ears. This couldn't be a coincidence. His name was Luke. His wife's name was Julie. They were expecting a baby girl. Cold realization crept over her like a shadow. Could this be the man who vanished when she was a baby? Could this actually be her father? She opened her mouth, her breath quick and shallow. No, I don't think so. The cafe's warmth faded. The clinking of cups, the murmur of voices, all drowned out by the rush of blood in her ears. Luke wasn't moving. He stared at her, eyes searching, waiting, and then, like a dam breaking, she couldn't hold it in anymore. I think she's my mom. Abby's voice trembled. I think you're my dad. You disappeared almost 25 years ago. Right after I was born. Luke didn't react at first. The weight of her words sank into the space between them, heavy and unmovable. Seconds passed like hours. She wanted to run, but stayed glued to her seat opposite of him. Then he finally spoke. That's not possible. I'm right here. I'm not missing. I come to this place all the time. He shook his head, as if refusing to let the realization settle. Besides, I would have been a kid, 6 years old back then. Back then? The words caught in Abby's throat. Back when? Her fingers trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. She inhaled sharply, steadying herself before asking the question she suddenly dreaded. What year is it? Luke's face was a storm of emotions. Confusion, disbelief, something close to fear. 1999. Abby's breath left her in a silent gasp. The world around her warped, twisted. The answer she had been looking for had been right in front of her all along. She had stepped back in time. The Odyssey. As the sea tosses the Odyssey between its mountainous waves like a ping-pong ball, it's all I can do to keep one hand on the rudder. She's in bad shape, and I'm not much better. Ugly, purple-blue bruises stain my arms and sides from the amount of times I've been thrown against the edge of the boat, with wind stinging me with its spiteful embrace, and rain blurring my vision like tears. I can hardly see a foot in front of me. Although it wouldn't be much if I could. The whole ocean from the waves ahead, the Odyssey to the horizon, is frothed up in a frenzy of movement. And everything looks the same. Another wave crashes against the side of the boat, and she tips sideways. My legs slip out from under me. I'm hanging, arms stretched high over my head as I hold on to the rudder. The Odyssey is almost still, stuck in the uncertain midpoint between falling right way up or upside down. I clench my eyes shut and breathe in deeply. My stomach clenches as I try to hold in the air I'll need when the boat gets overturned. The vicious wind assaulting my ears stops me from hearing the wave that turns us over. My head hits the deck. I lose my grip on the rudder. My senses flood with water. I try to keep a clear head without opening my eyes. Hopefully, the hundreds of storms I've been in before have adequately prepared me for this. It's what I think every time, but I never know until the storm has passed and I'm still alive. Under the surface, the current's still the same. It tosses me from one wave to another. I grope around for a handhold. I must know this deck enough to find one. But within the rage of the storm, I can't place my thoughts steadily enough to get a clear picture of the deck above water. And I plan to spend as little time as possible studying it from below. after what was probably minutes rather than hours, but was, in either case, too long. I managed to grip something. It's a kind of pole, thick, so that I have to use both hands to hold on. My lungs raise a tentative whine, a plea for my mouth to open. Not yet, I tell them. Previous storms have taught me I'll have to wait until the fury is over before I upturn my boat. In the meantime, I'll have to find my way onto the bottom of the vessel to catch a breath and try not to slip off until the storm has passed. I claw my way to the edge. My eyes are stinging from the exposure to salt water and from how tightly I'm clamping them together. There's a flame alight in my lungs, and I fight the urge to open my mouth for just 1 second to put the fire out. I grab the end of the keel and try to push myself up, but it's too wet and slippery to get a firm hold. The waves slap me against the boat. My mouth opens involuntarily to groan in pain, and I clamp it shut. Too early or too late, water has managed to creep inside my mouth, but air hasn't. Clinging desperately to the edge of the keel, I wrap my legs around the rope that's always coiled on the end of the deck, not daring to open my eyes. I clench my knees together and try to pull the rope up to me. It slips. I only just catch it with my feet. Suppressing a yelp, I force myself to remain calm. Panicking could make me drown. Trying a different tactic, I use my boots to spread the rope out. I have to let go of the keel with one hand so I can hold it. I hesitate, then shake the reluctance out of my head. Indecision could make me drown too. My lungs burn as if they're packed with ice. My left hand slips, and I take the opportunity to grasp the rope. Pulling it upwards, I grab the keel again, this time holding the rope between 2 fingers. A lull in the waves lets me take a shaky breath. Just enough to keep me going. I try again with my right hand. Letting go of the keel, I grip the rope between 2 fingers. I fiddle with it until I've got a good grip. Then pull my hand up to grasp the keel again. This is always the hardest part. So far, I've always managed it. But there's a first time for everything. If this doesn't work, I'm dead. I can't help the thought. I shove it away, recalling the face of my wife and daughter. I need to live, at least for them. Gathering my courage, I pull my hands up, bringing the rope with me. It goes taut, and I stop myself, breathing a sigh of relief. It would only waste breath. Tugging the rope upwards, I haul myself onto the bottom of the Odyssey and allow myself a breath. My lungs are still burning, but it's bearable for now. Only one more job. Taking a deep breath, I lay on my front and force my head underwater. I don't waste time tying a double anchor bend around the closest rail of my boat. Finishing it, I drag my head out of the water and quickly tie the other end of rope around my waist in a bowline knot. I pull myself back out of the water and treat myself to a well-earned breath. A few drops of salt water splash past my open lips, but at least I'm not drowning anymore, lying uncomfortably on my front. I stretch my arms and legs out to improve balance. I can feel my face turning red from being pressed against the keel, so I turn it sideways. One eye is too squashed to open. The other is squinted for maximum balance of sight and clarity, given the waves that continue to assault me. Until the storm passes, I'm stuck like this. Afterwards, I can safely overturn the Odyssey. I can only hope it won't happen before I've untied myself. But for now, all I can do is wait. Where pirates came to die. A breath of wind slithered through the ruins and tumbled across his weathered face as he pressed the shard of limestone down the dry ashlar wall, leaving a new etched tally mark. It was a dimly lit chamber inside what was once the world's most notorious pirate prison. For him, it was a sanctuary, a place of refuge. Once the web developer for Shackleford Inc., in a city of skyscrapers, eclectic culture, and ultra-modern technology, Tom Malone scanned his Neanderthal calendar. 240 tallies made up the wall. Some were circled, and only he knew why. Gone were the titles of husband, employee, and neighbor. Given his isolated surroundings, the term castaway was more appropriate. A life filled with country club galas, company retreats, and exotic travel was lost. Survival had replaced living. Tom buttoned his slightly torn flannel shirt and grabbed his coat. He exited the chamber where the wrought iron door, rusted and bent, hung by a single hinge. He moved down the main corridor and stepped through a hollowed-out gap in the outer wall. The Rook, as it was called, was made up of 3 layers, undoubtedly to make escape near impossible for even the smartest buccaneer. If the legends were true, the Rook had seen the likes of Edward Davis and even Black Anthony zipping his coat. He trudged down the path to the beach. This was his routine every day. 2 laps around the island. The overcast sky produced a gloomy horizon, but that was normal for this time of year, or so he assumed. If the tallies were correct, it should be October. The sea was a gray mass of rippling currents. Tom breathed profoundly, absorbing the salty fragrance. The flow of the ambient tide took him back to simpler times when walking on a beach meant hunting for shark teeth, metal detecting for forgotten coins and jewelry. and collecting seashells that made their way into the guest bathroom. Such days seemed as far out of reach as the horizon. Suddenly, he spotted tracks. They snaked from the north before turning about just outside the rook's outer wall. He recognized the tread patterns as those of a Jeep Wrangler. Tom followed, occasionally glancing over his shoulder. When he reached the familiar bend on the beach, he heard the blast of a horn and dove behind a line of palm trees. Peering through the trunks, he noticed a docked ferry on the beach. A Jeep was climbing the ramp onto the ferry. Personnel in neon-colored jackets moved about the deck. Another search party, he thought. A mustached man in uniform, wearing the same jacket, examined an area in the sand. He spoke into his radio before moving further inland. Tom's heart leapt into his throat when he caught sight of the woman following behind. She wore a yellow raincoat, and her arms were folded tightly as the sea breezes pushed ashore. Her curls flailed and whipped, no matter what direction she faced. She said something to her uniformed companion and advanced toward the tree line. "No," Tom muttered, before slipping back from the bend. He tried to quicken his pace, but the dry sand absorbed every step. Once back in the chamber, he dropped to the floor and focused on slowing his breathing. The acoustics had almost given him away during the initial search months earlier. His heart drummed, and his temporal pulse thumped. He caught his face in the mirror, fragment by the tally wall. It had belonged to the mirror in the cabin cruiser's bathroom before Tom dismantled the million-dollar yacht upon his arrival. He gazed at the worn face and graying beard. Then there was the scar, where scalding grease once landed. "Tom!" came the woman's voice. He pressed against the chamber wall like a spy dodging a spotlight. "Mrs. Malone, we've searched the ruins before with no luck." He assumed this was the uniformed man. Tom felt his way down the chamber wall and gripped a loose stone. After a few careful tugs, it came out of its place. He reached into the cavity and pulled out the dust-covered Glock. "Tom!" Squeezing the seasoned grip, he inhaled deeply, closed his eyes, and exhaled. His mind traveled to the frost-covered day after his father was buried. Tom opened the gun cabinet and retrieved the pistol his father taught him to shoot with. "This will be yours someday," he would say at the range. Tom choked back the mist that wanted to erupt from his eyes. None of it matters now. Too much has happened. He took another lungful before pursing his lips and blowing out. He eyed the tallied wall and totaled the circled marks. 16. He suspected as much, but now he knew. One bullet remained. "We need to call off the search." He called out, his voice nearer than before. That meant she was too. "No, he's here. I know it," came her distraught and shaking voice. Tom pressed harder to the wall. He hoped the ancient stone could absorb him, and conceal any trace of a man desperate to remain in the shadows. "Ma'am, the weather is slowing us down, and the city cannot afford a stranded ferry with personnel on board. Would you stop if it was not if it meant putting others in danger." He ran his free hand over the scar. He traced the tight line of skin that ran from beneath his eye to the corner of his mouth. The sting had subsided long ago, but the hurt ran deep. "Please," she pleaded, "just let me look in here." The man radioed the ferry that he was making a final sweep of the old ruins, and that preparations for departure should begin immediately. For a moment, all was still. "Tom!" came the frantic echo. He slid his finger over the cold trigger. "Never again will you scar me, Maria," he whispered. A single shot rang from the remnants of a place where pirates came to die. Stormy night. Eli Carter stood in the middle of Elm Street, rain pouring down like God's own wrath, drenching him to the bone. The water hit the pavement so hard it bounced. A million tiny suicides leaping from the sky, only to splatter and die. The street lights flickered, their weak yellow halos barely piercing the downpour. His shoes squelched with each step, and his breath came in tight little gasps. He didn't know how long he'd been standing there. Minutes? Hours? A lifetime? He had no memory of how he got here. A second ago, or maybe an eternity, he had been in bed, tangled in sheets damp with sweat, the weight of a dream pressing down on him like a lead blanket, a dream of movement, of running. Endless hallways stretched before him, impossibly long, bending at angles that didn't make sense. The walls, lined with doors, slammed shut behind him, one by one, not by his doing, but by something unseen, something chasing, something that wanted him. Each door he passed felt like a choice he had already failed to make. Each slammed door, a lost opportunity. His breath had come in gasps. His legs ached from running. But the hallways never ended. Just turn after turn, door after door, the floor shifting beneath his feet like the belly of a great beast. There were no windows, no light, except the sickly glow of something overhead that wasn't quite a bulb, wasn't quite fire. And in the air, thick as humidity in August, was the hum of something enormous, some deep, resonant sound felt more in his ribs than in his ears. And then, this. The dream had ruptured, torn apart like thin fabric. And he had been here, the rain, the street. No transition, no waking up. Just one reality swapped for another, seamlessly, cruelly. His mind struggled, clawing for logic where there was none. The downpour drummed against his skull, cold rivulets snaking down the back of his neck, washing away the last frayed edges of the dream. But had it even been a dream? Because the certainty struck him now, deep and final. A stone dropped into the well of his gut. Something was very, very wrong. A flicker of movement caught his eye. Across the street, just beyond the yawning black mouth of an alley, stood a man. He was tall and thin, dressed in a suit too old-fashioned to be modern, but too crisp to be antique. His face was long, almost horse-like, but his eyes were holes, not black pits, not deep shadows, holes, like someone had taken an ice cream scoop to his face and dug them clean out. Eli took a step back. The man took a step forward. A chuckle floated through the rain, thin and reedy, like laughter being played backward on an old cassette tape. Eli turned and ran. The city around him twisted as he moved, as if reality itself were coming undone, unraveling thread by thread. The buildings groaned, their bones creaking, their very foundations shifting beneath his frantic steps. They leaned in, warping like softened candle wax left too close to a flame, their brick faces drooping, sagging, watching. Windows blinked, slow, reptilian, sluggishly adjusting their focus. Black pupils contracting and expanding, as if deciding whether to acknowledge him or swallow him whole. The sidewalks rippled beneath him, no longer solid, but something uncertain, something alive. Each step sent out concentric rings through the puddles, distorting his reflection. His face melting, elongating, breaking apart into something unrecognizable. The street lamps flickered, their light stretching and warping, casting shadows where there should be none. Shadows that flickered and darted, mimicking his movements with a half-second delay, as if considering whether they should obey him or something else entirely. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. His feet pounded against the street, their rhythm desperate, breath hitching in his throat, like a song caught on a broken record. His lungs burned, his muscles screamed, but none of it mattered, because behind him, gaining, closing the distance with something worse than footsteps, was him. No sound, no breathing, just presence, heavy, dense, a gravity that pressed against the nape of Eli's neck, thick as storm clouds rolling in, the air charged with something unspeakable. His skin prickled, his instincts screamed, "Don't look back, don't look back." But something deep inside him, something ancient and terrified, already knew if he did, if he turned to see what followed, it would be the last thing he ever saw. He rounded a corner and slammed into something solid. A wall? No. A person. A woman. She was small, bird-like, with a sharp face and sharper eyes. Her raincoat was red, vivid, almost glowing against the gray world around them. She grabbed Eli by the shoulders, her fingers biting into his flesh like talons. "You need to wake up," she hissed. "I am awake," she shook her head. Not yet. A roar split the air behind him. Not a human sound. Not even an animal sound. A sound made of nightmare and hunger, of places that existed only in the deepest recesses of the brain. The places humans had long since forgotten how to fear. Eli turned. The man was closer now, his mouth stretching into an impossible grin, jagged teeth protruding like broken piano keys. The woman yanked Eli to the side, dragging him toward the nearest door. It wasn't there a second ago, but it was there now. A rusted metal thing, standing in the middle of the sidewalk, freestanding, no walls to frame it. She shoved it open and pulled him through. Everything flipped. Inside out. Upside down. Eli hit the ground hard, the breath leaving his lungs in a rush. He rolled onto his back, staring at the ceiling of his bedroom. The rain was gone. The city was gone. The woman gone. He was lying in his own bed, tangled in sweat-drenched sheets, the room bathed in the cold glow of his alarm clock. 3:47 a.m. A dream. Just a dream. He sat up, rubbing his face. His hands were shaking, fingers twitching like dying spiders. His throat was dry, a desert of cotton and dust. He needed water, something real, something solid to anchor himself. The lingering weight of the dream, or whatever it had been, clung to him like a second skin, sticky, suffocating. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and froze. His feet were wet, not damp, not dewy with sweat. Wet, like he had waded through a flooded street, like he had stepped barefoot into the mouth of a storm. His pajama pants clung to his calves, the fabric sodden and heavy, waterlogged with something that smelled faintly of earth and rot. The cold bled into his bones. Then he saw it, a tiny river of water, glistening in the dim glow of his bedside clock, winding its way across the floor like a snake slithering home. It led to the bedroom door. No, not just to the door. Through it. And there, stark against the pale wood, were muddy footprints. His footprints. Eli's breath hitched. His ribs felt too tight, his heart slamming against them like a frantic bird trapped in a cage. He reached out with a trembling hand and touched the sheets, sopping wet. The scent of rain clung to them, sharp and electric. The metallic tang of a storm that had no place inside his room. A storm that should not have followed him here. The air shifted behind him. The closet door creaked. The sound slow and deliberate, like a sigh from something old and waiting. The shadows inside it gaped, thick and hungry, and then, oh God, then from the darkness came a chuckle, thin, reedy, a sound that knew him. In the alley, you never know when or exactly where I, the destroyer, will strike. I respect no one, people, animals, houses, or possessions. Hear me roar as I approach. Dark clouds and sky announce my coming. Witness my violence. Trees fall, glass shatters, puny man-made cars flip over, roofs are ripped off, light poles are bent. There is no stopping me. A storm is coming, Mitzi. I can feel it in my old bones, Gladys Moore said to her cat that morning. Better turn on the news to see if the weather people know anything. Gladys had lived in Grand Island, Nebraska all her life. No stranger to storms, she knew what to do and had ridden out several during her lifetime with only major yard cleanup. She wasn't that worried. She had a cellar, but she hadn't met an F5 yet. Mitzi vigorously licked her ears. Inside the canal, pressure was building. Far away in the distance, her sensitive hearing picked up a rumble of thunder. She raced around the kitchen, her fur standing on end and her tail puffed out. If her person knew what was good for her, she would slide underneath the bed soon. Well, that is, if she would fit. Rusty Booman heard the news. Same county, same general vicinity. A twister is headed our way. Rusty yelled at his brother, Charlie. Clothes and shoes were jammed on. A camera was slung around Rusty's neck. The back screen door slammed. Charlie gunned the Chevy farm truck as dust and gravel flew up behind them on the road. Rusty switched the radio on and listened to the newscaster. "Turn toward Alda," he said to Charlie. Just then, his phone began flashing. "This is the emergency warning system. Prepare for tornado near Alda and Grand Island." Charlie peered up through the truck window at the sky, where greenish-gray clouds amassed. A stiff wind whistled through gaps in the insulation around the truck's doors. Suddenly, the gale held its breath. The eerie silence momentarily chilled the simmering excitement of the young men. Charlie pulled to the road's shoulder. "This is it, Russ. Get the camera ready. Our names will be all over TV when we get a close-up picture of the funnel coming down. They will say something like, 'Young storm chasers capture tornado touchdown,' and we'll be famous." They jumped out of the truck, and Rusty adjusted his camera's f-stops. Later, what was actually said was, "Young storm chasers killed near Alda." Their pickup truck lay in the ditch next to the road. Who knows what happened to the camera and the pictures? They were never found. "Foolish young men," says the destroyer. "But there is no law that says that people can't be idiots. They got a warning. Even looking at the signs in the sky should have told them I was imminent. No remorse on my part. As soon as Gladys saw the darkening expanse above her house, she put on her sturdy shoes and hung a whistle on a chain around her neck. She called her neighbor, Torrance Fielding. "You headed for shelter?" she asked. "Need anything?" "Yep, going down to keep the spiders in the basement company. Got everything I need. You?" "I'm fine. Just got to sit it out." Her tornado safety list was checked. Food, warm clothing and blankets, a flashlight, first aid kit, her meds, and water. She put Mitzi in her carrier with a soft cloth on the bottom. After several trips downstairs with supplies and her beloved cat, she closed the basement door behind her. A transistor radio would give her news. She put on her bicycle helmet, lest something hit her in the head, well away from the small windows. Gladys planted herself in a chair with Mitzi on her lap. Mitzi hated being confined and restless. She squirmed and meowed. Outside, the wind rose and shrieked and howled like a possessed animal while they waited and waited. Fear shivered down Gladys's spine. Then a silent lull, somehow more frightening, like the storm was gathering strength for its next onslaught. The house began to shake. Hail rattled down outside like bullets. She covered her head and Mitzi with a blanket. Slam, bang. They could hear wood splintering, objects falling and crashing to the floor above them. Paint cans plunged from the basement shelves, and some ruptured, spattering the cement with color. A suffocating pressure bore down on Gladys's chest. Rising dust made her cough. Her heart pounded, and her breath came in gasps. Panicked, she yanked the covering off herself. Bright flashes of light could be seen through the shattered window panes as the tornado passed over them. Debris from outside whooshed in through the broken windows. Mitzi attempted to claw her way out of her prison, but Gladys held her fast. Had hours passed? Again, an ominous hush after the storm had passed over them. But Gladys sat still for minutes, squeezing the carrier against her shaking body. Mitzi let loose a yowl. "We're safe, sweetie." "We made it." Slowly, Gladys stood. Her shoes crunched over broken glass, blown clear across the floor. Avoiding the paint puddles, she grasped the handrail with one hand and climbed the stairs to the door leading back into her house. It would not open. She jiggled the handle. Nothing. She set Mitzi down on the stairs and pushed her weight against it. Wouldn't budge. No way could she crawl out those dinky basement windows. Anyway, she'd be cut to pieces. Wasn't there a hammer down here somewhere? Yep, it had fallen from its perch on the pegboard. My strength isn't what it used to be. These doors were made solid. Not such a great thing right now. She kept hammering without much result. Sweat rolled down her face. She should be glad she'd survived, but now being trapped was scary too. Mitzi wasn't helping. Her plaintive cries grated in Gladys's ears and made her more on edge. She set her weapon down and rubbed her forehead. To her surprise, her fingers came away bloody. When had she got injured? Now it hurt. But when she looked down, her eyes rested on her whistle. She blew with all her might, while Mitzi flattened her ears. Hours later, when Torrance was able to exit his own house, which had been flattened by the big oak in his yard, he hurried to Gladys and heard her now faint whistle. He shook his head in wonder. One wall with a door stood. Otherwise, her house was a pile of rubble. "I hear you, Gladys," he shouted. "I'm going to get you out." The destroyer laughed as he barreled down the countryside, wreaking devastation as he went. Even the people like Gladys, who planned ahead, aren't completely safe from me. I demolished her house. She's homeless now. But like others, she might rebuild. Spawned by a thunderstorm, I'll gather strength again soon and plunder this same area. Crazy people. There's a reason why they call it Tornado Alley. Paranoid delusions. The wind buffeted him wildly, and the rain hammered down relentlessly. He was walking near the local creek, which was connected to the suburb's storm water drains. But this particular area was just rocks, shrubs, trees, and water. Hastily, he made his way down to the muddy stream, which, at this time, was pitch black, and stepped into the water. This would be a sort of baptism. He descended into the water and dunked himself in it. It was too shallow to cover his entire body, so he splashed some water onto his head. Now he was ready for whatever this night held in store for him. As he ascended the side of the creek, he saw before him the well-trimmed grass soccer field, lit by down lights on the large steel poles surrounding it, and began to stagger in its direction. Soon, he was standing in the middle of the field, wet from the downpour. He felt alone. Not physically alone. There were cars going up and down the road next to the field. But as far as he knew, nobody knew he was out here. But strangely, he saw someone approaching in the light. It was a middle-aged man. Thunder boomed across the field. "What are you doing out here?" "Best to be truthful. I'm waiting for the world to end." "Have you come to join me?" Lightning lit up the sky. "Yes, I'm out here for the same reason." They both turned and looked at the houses, whose steel back fences met the side of the field. "Do you think we're the only ones who know?" The rain belted down on them both. "I think so." The thunder from the lightning rumbled heavy and hard as more great arcs lit up the sky, and the rain became heavier. The man looked at him, through the gelatinous downpour. "How did you get here?" he replied in a frantic rush. "I've been walking through this night down many different paths. I honestly couldn't tell you how I got here. I just kept on walking. Eventually, I hit the creek over there, and then I came to this field. The wind battered them, causing the rain to hit them in an angular fashion, directly on their face. The man came up to him, soaking wet, and put a hand on his shoulder. "Tell me your name. We need to pass the time somehow." The rain began to subside, and the wind became calmer. He responded, "My name's Jack. Who are you anyway?" The man looked at the ground, his hand still on his shoulder. "I'm David. Tell me everything you know about why you're here. Tell me everything you know about the world ending." He sat down, and the man sat with him. "I left my car when the radio started sounding funny. Just got out and left it where it was. It wasn't just the radio. I felt like the car was going to lock me in any second. I walked and walked, and when I got to some shops, I heard people laughing at me, but I just ignored them and opened the Bible. I was sitting on a concrete barrier, and the pages just started to turn, slowly at first, but then faster and faster, till it stopped at the book of Revelation. Ah, the book of Revelation, the prophecy of the end times. But don't you think that maybe it was just the wind? Jack's face tightened, and his teeth gritted. "It was a sign. I know a sign when I see one." A loud thunder crack shook the earth. He began to pace back and forth, and then turned to face David, his voice trembling despite his efforts, words spilling out too fast, fingers twitching against the damp grass. "The end of the world is when God returns his Son, Jesus, back to the world to judge everyone. Everything great we have built, all the technology we have created, it won't make any difference. Everything will be destroyed to be remade again. All the wicked will be sent to hell, while those who believe will be given new bodies and will live forever with God, Jesus, in their midst." "I see," said David. "I'm not going to debate your beliefs with you. I respect your choice. But tell me, what made you think it's happening right now?" He began to pace again. "It started as a feeling. I was feeling so amped up. And then I saw the pages turn on my Bible. And then this crazy storm started happening. And I've had this horrible feeling, like 1,000 people are watching me at once. If I close my eyes, I can almost see them looking at me. And then, when I was in my car, I heard people singing my name. I don't know why they were doing that. Maybe they want me to think I'm special. So I'll think I am the Messiah, but I'd be a false Messiah, so I can't let them control me." David replied softly, "I can see there is a lot going on for you. Let's break this down. So, The storm made you feel more alert, more vigilant. The way you said it before, it was as if your feelings created the storm. But don't you think the storm might have been what, in your words, amped you up, and not the other way around? The wind became gentle. He continued, his voice calm and reassuring, and the feeling of being watched. This could be paranoia. Many people who become paranoid feel they are being watched. And when you heard people singing your name, are you sure that's what you heard? Do you think maybe you misheard? Or perhaps you're hallucinating? In any case, you left your car running in the middle of the road. I hope it hasn't been stolen. His shoulders slumped. The clouds were clearing, and a few stars were visible through the soccer field lights. Everything you're saying could be true, but if I can't trust my own feelings, how can I know anything? I'm a Christian. I believe God can talk to me. Is God deceiving me? Silence descended upon them, with only a faint breeze gusting back and forth. David smiled. Listen, I respect your beliefs, and I'm sure that there is something in those beliefs that allows for God to communicate with you in certain ways. But let me tell you something. He opened his wallet and pulled out a card. I am not actually here for the end of the world. I'm here to find you. I'm a psychologist in the public mental health care system. Your parents have reported you missing, and I'm here because your phone allowed us to track you. That might sound like a breach of privacy, but believe me, it's in your own interest. Right now, I believe you are mentally unwell, and I want to help you. Look at the both of us out here, soaked from head to toe. I need you to follow me over to my car so we can take you somewhere where we have medicine that can help calm you down. It's going to be hard at first. The medication isn't perfect, but if you keep taking it, you will get used to the side effects. And then things like this won't happen again, hopefully. He looked down, wondering at everything he had just heard. How do I know you're telling the truth? How do I know you're going to take me somewhere and torture me? You know the world is filled with people who hate Christians. How do I know you're not a Satanist and part of a plan to make me lose my faith? Tears began to fall from his eyes. I believe that God can get me through anything. But honestly, I don't know if I could hold up under torture. The wind began to pick up again. David's face took on a look of empathy. All I can say is that I promise I'm here to help you. If God is going to communicate with you, it will help if you're thinking straight. And that's what we're going to try to do. Help you to be able to think without succumbing to delusions and paranoia. I've seen many cases like yours, and I really do feel for the people we treat. Will you come with me? He felt a sense of resignation. All right, I'll come with you. Though the ground was soaked, he could feel the firmness of the earth beneath his feet. The two of them walked off the field. The air was now completely still, and crickets could be heard chirping in the night air. The vale bloom. Elwyn absorbed the gentle coastal wind as it caressed her face from where she sat within the moors that lined her village. Stray wisps from her plaited, brown, gold-streaked hair broke free as it was picked up by drafts. Distant sounds of the nearby market where she worked were a pressing reminder that she had stolen extra minutes to escape work duties. The red knitted hat protecting her ears played tug of war with the increasing gusts that rippled through the purple heather as she ran back towards the busy village, only looking down to ensure she did not step on any wildlife going about their day. Without warning, a darkness encroached the sky, and a slow, thick mist curled around the young woman's path. Elwyn became a static pillar of fear, watching the tendrils of mist reaching out and parting the heather, beckoning her to change her path, unable to sense beyond the darkness that strangled out the rest of the world. Elwyn tensely focused her vision on what the dark magic revealed. Something was glowing intensely. Elwyn tenderly progressed her nimble feet, feelings of fear and interest arguing with one another. She came upon a ruby-red thorned bush, isolating an intense, majestic amethyst glow beneath it. A faint whisper trickled into Elwyn's ears. The bramble peeled itself, exposing the velvet-petaled, regal-like flower bud glistening with crystal dewdrops. "The tide obeys the moon," a female voice sang, prompting the rose to bloom fully before Elwyn's widened eyes. "But not all who guide you wish you to sail true." Before she could repeat the phrase in her head, the darkness sank away into the moors, leaving no trace of its sudden presence. The purple rose remained in Elwyn's hand for only a second before she carefully stuffed it into her pocket as voices came booming from the village, indicating that she had indeed been away too long. Looking and finding no traces of the encounter, she fled for the market. As Elwyn approached her father's stall, she could hear murmurations from the fellow tradesmen. Shouting orders came from customers who bartered prices on fabrics and fresh fish. "Did you see the weather change?" Elwyn hastily asked as she removed her hat and jacket, messily placing them onto the upturned veg crates in front of the stall. "Never mind the damn weather. Get peeling these damn carrots for supper." He tossed a knife to Elwyn and kicked an empty bucket next towards her feet. He was only strict from the grief of losing his love and their newborn daughter in childbirth in recent years. Frustrated, Elwyn perched herself on a stool and began carving at a carrot stump. Even if she told her father, he wouldn't believe her. The rugged orange skin tumbled into the bucket between her feet as her eyes fixed with intrigue on the powerful purple rose that seemed to glisten from the adjacent pocket. "It's a veil bloom, if you were wondering," came a voice full of wisdom and assurance from the front of the tent. Elwyn glanced up to see a tall, thin, yet toned male figure bent over, perusing at the cabbages. His eyes pined towards the purple veil bloom, peeping out of the brown jacket pocket. The flower's quiet, luxurious vibrance seemed out of place and would surely be noticed by a knowing collector's eye. Elwyn glanced quickly towards her father, hoping she would not be heard. But he remained engrossed in organizing the stock in the back of the tent. "What do you know of them?" Elwyn stopped peeling and fixed a softened stare at the male. Her wide eyes probably revealed too much as she hoped for answers. Had she been cursed? She submissively looked toward the flower, phantom feeling its hard thorns against her fingers. "Only what the legend states," Vasca answered. "It's like finding a four-leaf clover. Just lucky." He picked up a cabbage and placed it under his arm. "My name is Vask. My family own a stall on the outskirts of the village. In my spare time, I am not ashamed to say that I am an anthophile." Vasca took out a small pocket-sized leather sketchbook. He opened it to reveal small flowers pressed neatly between the pages, each one secured with a small bit of clear tape. Elwyn tentatively leered over to see sprigs of lavender and small bouquets of daisies married together. Between parchment, she returned her eyes to Vasca. His emerald eyes cut sharp against the copper curls that framed his softened jawline. "I am only interested in where you found it, to satisfy the curiosity of a collector." His eyes flashed to meet hers. "I found it in the moors," was all Elwyn offered, indicating that if Vasca was to hold the cabbage in the crook of his arm any longer, he was to pay for it. Embarrassed, he hastily put his hand in his pocket to search for payment. Bringing out 2 silver coins, he placed them on the wooden trade table that bore the produce. "Thank you," Vask smiled as he grabbed 2 more cabbages. "Keep the change, and if you are into books, come by the stall tomorrow." He kept Elwyn's stare as he retreated into the market crowd. "Oi!" shouted Elwyn's father. "Are we getting supper tonight, or do I have to finally skin the cat?" Her father was stood holding up the rear tent flap, peering in with disappointment. Startled, Elwyn kicked the bucket back between her well-worn leather boots and continued to scalp the skin from the carrot, stealing glances at the veil bloom in wonder of its true intentions. The next day, Elwyn laid out the vegetables onto the wooden trade table as her father stacked the emptied crates from behind the tent. After a night of being plagued by the whispers and visions of dark forests, she desired to know more about the veil bloom. The blood-red thorns pressed into the inner lining of her coat pocket, the tips seeping through to the cotton of her work dress, nipping at her as she moved. Glancing down, she could see the rich velvet petals, longingly looking back up at her from within, deep in her coat pocket. She rubbed her thumb over the veil bloom's soft middle. The tightly gathered corolla gently ticked the pad of her thumb. "I'm just going to get a new recipe book," Elwyn called to her father. Before he could battle her decision, she broke out into a purposeful stride. Her jacket rippled against the cool air as her arms straightened through the sleeves. She pulled her collar to secure herself against the chill, weaving in and out of tradesmen setting up their stalls, unsure of the faces that surrounded her in a familiar setee of work. She kept her head low, turning on her heels and accepting defeat, trying to find Vaska. Elwyn began to walk back to the southern area of the coastal market. Smells of fresh fish and spices began to fill her nostrils, reminding her stomach of its emptiness. "I found it," called a familiar voice. Vaska appeared in her eye line as she paused to see him run back into his tent and return with a large, tatted book. "Veil Bloom." Vaska turned the book towards Elwyn as her hands held the edges to support its weight with him. "Located in lands of enchantment, it amplifies one's desires and strength, even with madness." Vaska laughed gently as he impersonated a person riddled with madness and unbalance. Elwyn rejected the book by letting go of the worn-down leather edging and taking a step back from Vaska. "It also says it sings lullabies, which probably explains the bit about going mad." Vaska coyly laughed. Elwyn's face turned to deep thought at the young man, voluntarily helping her. "I don't desire anything." She paused, wondering if giving him the whole story would favor her or not. "What does it say about lullabies?" Her voice almost a whisper. The emerald in Vaska's eyes began to swirl with intrigue as he gestured for them to go somewhere quieter to talk. "Done." The pair sat cross-legged underneath a large oak tree situated on the outskirts of the market. Elwyn's face buried in the book of hidden blooms, each page so thin almost translucent, gently flapped between her fingertips. It says in the legend that if the flower starts to glow, you become more powerful. Vaska added, as he looked deeply into the island of dense forest on the horizon, isolated by small ocean waters. The enchanted, banished lands leaked darkness. His soft curls caught the wind, his eyes in a thoughtful trance. Elwyn shuddered at the thought of the flower's magic ending up in the wrong hands. "I should get back," Elwyn decided as she stood up, ready to face the wrath from her father upon her return. Elwyn woke suddenly in the dead of night. Sweat dripped from her brow, her long brown damp hair that clung to her neck. "Help us," came a faint whisper. Elwyn held her breath as she looked around for the voice's owner, the Veil Bloom, picking it up by its thick green stem. The ruby-red thorns pulsated as she brought it closer to her ear. "Help us, Elwyn." It eerily beckoned, suddenly, moving images as if they were her own memories, flooded her mind. She could see a vast forest that crawled with amethyst-colored smoke. A fawn emerged in the clearing, eyes wide with terror, trembling as it proceeded to lie down on the dark moss floor. Elwyn had feelings of blood rushing back to her limbs as she regained consciousness. Her mind lingered with a defiant message. The banished lands needed her help. Her head swiveled around to the oak tree beyond the market border, to see an elbow bent from behind it, as if someone was sat down with their back to it reading. Elwyn gingerly walked over to them, hoping the white cotton shirt belonged to Vaska, and not someone who would alert her father or challenge her in any way. Reassuringly, Vask sat with the heads of bluebells crowded on the bend of his knee as he pressed them into his sketchbook. He looked up to see a panic-stricken Elwyn. "What's the matter?" His face matched her concerned look. "The veil bloom showed me something," Elwyn bleated softly under her breath. "I don't know the meaning of the vision or the dream," Vasquez started, after hearing the story from Elwyn. He stared again at the island of trees isolated by small ocean waters, wondering if the legend is true of the banished lands. "If we go there, do you think we will die?" Elwyn asked with hope of a good answer. Vaska didn't respond. He continued his longing stare towards the banished lands. "I just know that this dream felt more real than any other I have had," Elwyn continued. "The fawn seemed terrified, not of me, but of something I don't think I could see. I think we should try to help it." Elwyn removed the veil bloom from her pocket. Its petals had begun to wilt at the edges, curling in as if it were ready to die. "What I have done?" Elwyn softly asked herself under her breath. Had she stayed in the market that day, she wouldn't be having nightmares caused by florals. "I don't think it's something that you have done," Vaska replied, as his eyes glinted with what seemed like excitement. "I think it's more about what you could do to help." Once they beached their stolen rowing boat amongst the cold brown sand on the shore of the banished lands. The atmosphere hung heavy as life drew to a whisper, and then to a flat silence. "What does your love of flowers tell you now?" Elwyn asked Vaska, with a tint of amusement at the moss-strangled rocks that decorated the forest floor. Not even the twigs beneath their feet made a noise as they progressed deeper into the darkness. "Nothing yet," Vaska gently replied, as they descended deeper into the towering forest. Elwyn tripped on a rock, twisting her ankle slightly. "Careful," Vask panted as he grasped a hold of her elbow, prompting a powerful vision into Elwyn's mind, causing her to spiral in between memories, not her own. A hushed murmur echoed in her ears as she saw sights of a large wolf with emerald eyes stalking and hunting on the outskirts of the forest. As if unable to enter beyond the first row of trees, many moons passed in the sky as it returned night after night. A clear voice embedded deep in Elwyn's veins. The tide obeys the moon, but not all who guide you wish you to sail true. The vision of the wolf disappeared into smoke, shifting into flurries of flashbacks. The first time she met the veil bloom flower, the look in Vask's eyes, as he also saw it for the first time that day in the market. As if he pined for it, she remembered. The book thrust into her face that day in the market. As if Vaska knew she would come looking for answers. The veil bloom let out a breath, glowing intensely in agreement. Elwyn had not realized she was now holding it, squeezing it in her paper-thin hand, seething from an anger rooted deep within. He had led her there, purposefully, knowingly. "Help us," came the wispy echo. It repeated with each turn, louder than the last. More voices adding into the chorus of pleas from wildlife. Elwyn fell to the floor as the visions and voices ripped away from her, breathless and her mind aching. She looked up to see Vask's face of worry. "What did you see?" he hastily asked, his face tense with pressure. Everything." Elwyn tried to continue when a creature in the clearing approached. A fawn. An amethyst smoke seeped in from behind the fawn, encasing everything in its wake in a building chaos. Turning to face the fawn properly, Elwyn could see the thick smoke tendrils once again clearing a path. This time around the fawn, who was whimpering, but showing a quiet strength, trying to stand. Elwyn had seconds to think. She turned to Vask. His emerald eyes were gleaming with anticipation at the flower as he turned toward her. "It's working," came Vaska's voice, a rasp with a hint of excitement at the veil bloom glowing intensely. He snatched it from her fingers, contorting his body in obsession and glee. He threw his arms in the air. "I am the most powerful!" But only silence sounded over the whirring mists. Elwyn felt a burning in her veins. Her body acted automatically as she turned to face Vaska, her back to the trembling fawn in protection. The veil bloom turned to ash in Vaska's trembling hand. His face mad. Auburn curls bounced around with every frantic move he made, searching for the bloom. He turned to see Elwyn, her arm outstretched in retaliation towards him. A push at his shoulder from an invisible force turned his face from confused to pure rage at seeing the veil bloom reforming itself in the powerful young woman's pocket, siding with her instead. "Clever girl, but I don't need you," Vaska hissed. "Just the veil bloom now that your kind heart woke it from slumber." His teeth began to form into sharp fangs. His face shifted into a recognizable wolf with emerald eyes. He lunged for Elwyn, jaws agape in blind fury and jealousy. Elwyn darted to the side. A fire of purple light erupted through her veins, streaming out from her fingertips into the wolf's beastly body. knocking him backwards. He steadied himself and leaped high into the air to plant another attack, aiming true to Elwyn and the glowing veil bloom. At once, she coaxed the power from the veil bloom, causing the ground to quake against the sheer force. Gripping against the weight of the power, she lifted and hurled a fatal blow towards the wolf, smashing his limp body against the strongest and tallest trees. Elwyn panted as she looked at the purple illuminations in her veins trickle out and into the fawn behind her. She looked up at the wolf, but only to see his body disintegrate into smoke and disappear into the sky. An escaped curse. Elwyn ran to the fawn, hoping to help it to live, to answer its plea. The soft curve of the fawn's head cupped Elwyn's hand, opening its eyes tenderly. The land around awoke in harmony. The fawn gathered to its feet, bowing proudly to Elwyn, as the gentle black nose touched the floor. A sweep of purple brushed through the land. A once cursed land started to return to life as animals crept out of deep burrows and birds took once again to the sky. The fawn transformed into a majestic stag, concluding the awakening of the misunderstood lands. His aura glowed in the same pearlescent magic that once flowed through Elwyn's veins. She looked down to see her bare arms and back to the stag, who nodded at her before bouncing off into the thriving atmosphere. Smiling, Elwyn knew her calling now was back to her grieving father. She could never leave him on his own. A thorn dug into her side. The veil bloom remained in her pocket, clasped tightly in a sleeping bud. Its messages sang deep in Elwyn's head as she stroked its velvety casing. It was the flower's magic that gave her the power to connect and calm the land. But it was her kind heart that ultimately saved them all. Swiped. He's here. And he's just as hot as his pictures, Charlotte texted from outside of the cafe. She moved 2 steps to her right. Jen responded with a string of emojis. Bearded man face, burning heart, guy and girl, kissing faces. Charlotte smiled and checked her hair in the reflection of the ramen place next door, getting faint notes of the meaty umami, all that her still partially stuffed nose would allow. Her phone buzzed. Charlotte swiped to see it was Jen, with another string of emojis. Sweaty face, fire, tongue, peace hand symbol, yum face, eggplant, peach, splash, snoring face, quickly followed by have fun, winking face. Charlotte applied lip gloss with her freshly manicured hand, pink nails matching her pick lip gloss, fluffed her hair, and snapped a selfie. Sending the filtered picture to Jen, she typed, "I'm going in." Jen hearted Charlotte's selfie and responded, "Sweep him off his hot feet. Call if it gets weird. I'll be right there." Charlotte hearted the message, stood up straight, shifted her shoulders back and down, and pouted her lips and eyes, the face that always attracts attention. Charlotte and Alex had been talking for 2 weeks, first through the app's messenger, then texting, then hours-long conversations in the evenings. She finally agreed to a date in public during the day at a location of her choosing. Charlotte, 29, was growing tired of the bar scene, the one-night stands. She enjoyed the attention, but she craved a man she could still stand on Sunday, a man she could go on a proper date with, spend an entire Saturday with wearing t-shirts, watching movies, and ordering takeout. She wanted a boyfriend, one she could introduce to her parents, a boyfriend she could marry. She wanted a husband who would help her raise her son. Charlotte's family came from old money. Her parents still lived in the plantation house where she was raised, the house that her father inherited. Her father drank bourbon, neat. He married his high school sweetheart. His wife had no need to work. Her working would only reflect poorly on the well-to-do family. They had pure-bred golden retrievers. They went to church on Sunday mornings. They had one perfect, gorgeous girl who had the world handed to her on an antique silver, lace, doily-lined platter. Her AKC-registered puppy by her side. She had a tutor and made straight A's. She went to Sunday school and could recite scripture. She played piano. She was a cheerleader and homecoming queen. She attended a debutante ball at 16 when she presented her parents a sonogram image of a 9-week-old life almost 2 months later. They pulled her out of her Christian school and transferred her to a boarding school more than 100 miles away so that she could finish her education without the distraction of devil-worshipping sinners occupying the halls of this shameful excuse of Jesus' house. After the baby was born, her parents funded lavish childcare so that Charlotte could graduate high school and attend college. She graduated summa cum laude and looked fabulous doing it. She ran on a treadmill and did pallets daily to lose the baby weight. Her parents' allowance afforded her regular Botox, laser body hair removal, weekly mani-pedis, monthly hair appointments, boutique clothing and jewelry, and cutting-edge skincare products and treatments. She was flawless, despite the constant drunken late nights, the Adderall to stay up, the Xanax to come down, the Zoloft to get her through each day, her unlimited supply, thanks to Dr. Dad. Wealthy eyes don't carry bags. Charlotte met Alex through a dating app. She swiped right without reading his bio, which she intended not to do. She wanted a boyfriend, not a boy toy. But That smile, those dimples, the perfectly messy hair, the shadow of a beard she imagined would send chills down her spine when they kissed, enough to drive her wild. Reading his bio, Charlotte found herself instantly lost in an imaginary future with him. The Spanish colonial home, yoga in the garden, her marketing businesses thriving, his groundbreaking medical research changing the course of cosmetic surgery, tapas on the veranda, summers in London, visiting his family. Alex sat at a table in direct eyesight of the entrance. A perfect man at a perfect table, far enough from the entrance to escape the heat, but well within the afternoon glow, bathing his skin in gold, and within clear view of her favorite barista, Naomi. Naomi always anticipated Charlotte's every need and filled it before Charlotte noticed what she lacked. Charlotte strutted directly towards Alex, the light forming a halo around her flawless silhouette. She smiled and waved to Naomi, whose facial rings shimmered in the sun. Alex stood to greet her, dressed exactly as she imagined he would. Beige linen pants, vertically striped cotton shirt with a deep V-neck, and pristinely clean brown leather sneakers. He smiled. "Wow," he said. "You're even more gorgeous in person." His British accent, the icing on the perfectly constructed cake in front of her. "You are looking quite good yourself," she responded. Alex leaned in for a friendly kiss on the cheek. Charlotte stepped back, placing a hand between their faces. "I'm still getting over this," she grimaced, pointing in the general direction of her face. "Gotta love those summer colds." "I understand." Please, sit," he invited as he pulled out her chair. Charlotte sat and smoothed the skirt of her silk mini dress. "What can I get for you? I'll place the order for us. I'll take a chamomile tea with honey and lemon, please." "Right." Alex stood at the counter between two glass cases of freshly baked muffins, scones, cookies, and tarts. A large basket of fresh fruit in front of the register. Charlotte watched him place their order, her chamomile tea and his tall, black Americano. He was very polite to Naomi, charming, almost flirtatious. He tapped his phone on the card reader to complete the transaction. He turned to meet Charlotte at the table, but changed his mind. "Actually, can I purchase one of those peaches? They look delectable, from a local orchard." "Perfect time of year," Naomi answered. Alex peeked around the basket and selected one. "How much?" he asked. Naomi smiled. "On the house?" Alex looked at Charlotte, then back at Naomi, confused. "You're a friend of Charlotte's. She keeps us all employed." Naomi winked at Charlotte, who returned the playful look. The cafe's owner, Tracy, approached Naomi then. "See you in the morning, kid. I'm heading home." She slung her computer bag over her shoulder, exposing a bandaged pinky. "Cat scratch you again?" Naomi joked. "Damn plastic wrap. sliced it right open. Naomi nodded. Call if you need anything. Otherwise, I'll meet you here, bright and early, Tracy said sarcastically. You know, you can just give me a set of keys, and you can sleep sometimes, Naomi called to Tracy on her way out. Tracy smiled and winked. Keep up the good work, kid. You'll get there. Tracy disappeared into the sunlight. Back at their table now, Alex joked. I didn't know I was with a local celebrity. Shall I pick up the drinks when they're ready? Naomi will bring them right to us. Brilliant. So, Charlotte, we meet at last. He placed his peach on the small plate Naomi gave to him and unwrapped his silverware roll. Naomi appeared with their hot drinks, your tea with honey and lemon, and your Americano, black, she recited as she gently placed the hot mugs in front of them. Thank you, Naomi, Charlotte said, as the barista walked back around the counter. Yes, we meet at last. She squeezed lemon juice into her tea and stirred in some honey. Cheers! Alex held up his mug. Cheers, Charlotte mirrored. I thought you Brits drank tea over there. Well, when in America, as they say. Alex sipped his coffee. So, tell me more about your first few days at the hospital. Not the onboarding stuff, or the people, but the work. The meat and potatoes, as we say. Charlotte rested her elbows on the table and cradled her chin. She was all his, right? I mean, where to start? I am just gobsmacked. Alex's face lit up. The operating theater they built is suited for the Queen. Top surgeons will fly in on a weekly basis for my lecture. From there, training. Who would have thought my research would have the reach it has? And cosmetic surgery is growing more and more by the day due to increasing accessibility. Now just imagine. I mean, costs will be reduced considerably as Alex went on with his research. Charlotte drifted off into daydreams. She wasn't interested in his work. She was interested in his paycheck, his face, and his body. She nodded and smiled, raised her eyebrows from time to time, inserted an interested "oh" occasionally. As he talked, she devised a plan to hook him for good. Before he knew what hit him, he would be her husband, stepfather to her son. She entertained his dissertation about facial symmetry and flesh, even as Naomi visited to see if they needed anything. Alex's eyes were locked on Charlotte's, so animated, eyes wide, arms gesturing this way and that. Charlotte gave Naomi an apologetic look and motioned that they were fine. Naomi turned to walk away and stopped dead in her tracks when she heard Alex describe human flesh with the same excited tone he used to describe the peaches. She glanced back at Alex, whose back was to her. Charlotte clocked Naomi's troubled look, but with a reassuring nod and smile, Naomi went back to taking orders. Would you like to see it sometime? Charlotte heard Alex say. Caught off guard with a question, she asked, See what? Surgery? Oh, no. No. The mock theater I built. Where I practice at home, he answered. Oh, she hesitated. Sure. I think I could come by one day. She bought herself some time. What about today? Now? My place is just around the corner. What do you say? Well, I still have this cold. One outing in a day is probably all I have energy for, she said nervously. Anyhow, I can probably demonstrate on this peach, now that I think of it. Do you have a pen? Charlotte dug into her Gucci bag and located a pen. Before handing it to Alex, she discreetly took her phone out of the bag and placed it on her lap. Here you go, she said, as she steadied her hand. He took the pen without looking at her. Alex drew 2 lines on the peach. Like I was explaining, if the cheekbone is here, he pointed at a line. You want to make your incision precisely. He took up the butter knife and carefully placed it along the second line. Here. He punctured the skin, juice escaping the fruit, dripping down the peach. He smiled and applied more pressure, exposing the meat inside. Veiny, juicy, fleshy. Yeah, Alex said, smiling. Yeah, he said again, almost laughing. Charlotte looked for Naomi at the counter. She was distracted by a line of customers, unaware of the peach mutilation. What do you practice on? At home? She asked Alex. Pigs, mostly. Dead. Donated to science, he answered as he used his napkin to wipe the liquid evidence off his hands. Pigs, mostly. So, pigs and... You know there is just no comparison to the beautiful, fatty flesh of a live human. Alex's eyes were wild, glued to Charlotte's. I have the nanny at home. I really should be going, she mumbled as she gathered her bag and started to stand. Just let me show you this last thing, right? Then you'll go and get some rest? He retrieved his phone from his pocket, looked at the screen to unlock it, and opened an app. He swiped a few times and turned the phone so that the screen faced her, still half standing. The image of her son playing in the park with the nanny glared back at her. She gasped and put a hand to her mouth. Sit, Alex demanded quietly. Charlotte looked at Naomi again, still taking orders. She sunk into her seat. Naomi can't help you, Charlotte. Without turning his phone around, he swiped through his photos. Picture after picture of the boy. At least a dozen. At school, in the back of her car, at home through windows, with her parents at the plantation home. Tears welled, and she used every ounce of strength to keep them from falling. You are going to suck those tears down, and you are going to come with me. We leave together as a happy couple. One wrong move, and the boy is dead. He locked his phone and put it back in his pocket. He cleared his throat and stood. Right then. Shall we? He said, smiling, his voice bouncy and pleasant. He held out a hand to Charlotte. She took it and stood. They walked out of the cafe hand in hand into the setting sun. The next morning, Naomi arrived at the cafe shortly after 5. Without keys, she'd be stuck outside waiting on Tracy, so she never arrived on time. After letting herself in, she stuffed her backpack in the cubby below the register. She clocked in, pulled her phone from her back pocket, found the playlist she wanted, and plugged it into the cafe's sound system. This was Naomi's way of letting Tracy know she had arrived without having to speak so early in the morning. The cafe's landline was blinking. Great. Another warning about our car insurance, Naomi thought, as she picked up the phone to listen to the message. Hello. I know this might sound strange, but my friend was there yesterday to meet a date, and now I can't get in touch with her. We talk every day, especially after a date. Her name is Charlotte. She's tall, blonde, beautiful. She was meeting a guy named Alex, a doctor from London. She texted me right after 4 to tell me she was there. I don't know how long they stayed. Anyway, if anyone knows anything, can you please give me a call? I have to wait 24 hours to report her missing. It's just not like her. My name is Jen, by the way. Jen said her number before Naomi had a pen and something to write on. So she started the message over. At the end of the second listen, Naomi wrote down the number on a napkin and placed it under her phone. She wasn't calling anyone at that hour. Besides, Naomi sort of knew Charlotte. She wouldn't be surprised if she left with the weirdo and was still naked in his bed, sleeping off another drunk. Naomi continued with her morning routine. She opened the bin of Colombian breakfast blend beans. She grabbed the large scooper and looked down at the beans. She screamed and dropped the scooper. "Tracy," she pleaded. "Tracy, come out here." No answer. No sound. She pulled her phone off the cord, music still playing through her phone's speaker, and dialed 911 without pressing send. She looked around and tiptoed back to the coffee bin to confirm her nightmare. 2 pinky fingers, lifeless on a pile of beans, one with a perfectly manicured pink nail, one with a band-aid wrapped around the knuckle. "Oh, God!" she cried. She noticed a piece of paper sticking out from the manicured pinky. At closer look, the paper had writing on it. A note. With a trembling hand, Naomi reached into the bin, carefully maneuvering around the fingers. She grabbed a corner and quickly yanked the note out, shrieking, "Squeal, and you're next." She slid to the floor in hopeless panic. Note clutched in one hand, her phone clutched in the other. The Beatles' "I Want to Hold Your Hand" played softly from her phone. So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, Don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.